In today's video, I'm going to show you how to add a USB port to this old speaker so you can use any USB-C cable to power it. So the speaker is nice and has Bluetooth and everything, but it is sort of a pain to use because you have to lug around, this big old charger. It's just a simple 12-volt barrel jack going in there. But you have to lug that around, you have to remember it, and then it's not easy to take in the car or anything or camping. But if this was USB-C, I can just use any USB-C power delivery charger, and then I can use it in the camper, around the house, wherever I have chargers, wherever I want. So that's what I'm going to do today. So for this, I'm going to be using this nice little pass-through with this little cable. So you have a nice port. The most important thing to make this work is one of these little tiny, they're really small, trigger boards. And what this does is basically, this is your port coming from your charger. It'll plug into here, and this will negotiate with the charger what voltage you want. So this can do 5 volts, 9 volts, 12 volts, 15 volts, and 20 volts, and each one can go up to 3 amps. So the speaker is 12 volts, so it makes sense just to do a 12 volt one, or it makes sense just to ask for 12 volts through this trigger board. But for some stupid reason, even though 12 volts is officially part of the power delivery standard, a lot of manufacturers skip it. So I'm actually going to do 9 volts, and then I use a buck converter to get up to 12 volts. And then it just is more universal with more chargers. To use this type of trigger board, you have to solder these little tiny points together to get different voltages. If you don't want to do that type of board where you have to solder them all together, you can get a board like this where you plug in your power, obviously. And then you have a button here that'll tell, you can use to switch between different voltages. And it'll stay at whichever one you set it at. So 12 volts, unplug it, and stuff, and then it gets plugged in again. Still at 12 volts. And this is another nice way to see what voltages your certain charger can use. For example, if I use a different charger here, if I use this charger, for example, it's just a Samsung 25 watt fast charger. You can see right there, it says 5 volts and 9 volts. If you don't know that though, this board can also tell you. So if I use this charger, plug it in here. Now I turn it on. See, it says 5 volts, 9 volts, and then it'll blink at the ones it doesn't have. So that's another option. Okay, so let's get into this. The parts I'll be using is a pass-through with a little tiny USB-C cable. You can also just drill a hole straight out and just have this, but I thought this would look a little nicer. Then I'll have my little trigger board here. And then this is the buck converter I'm going to be using to take it from 9 volts up to 12 volts, and it's capable of outputting 2 amps, which is plenty. The speaker only takes a couple watts. And again, this is completely unnecessary. You can just do straight 12 volts. But since some chargers don't do that, and 9 is actually on a lot of more phone chargers and stuff, I'm just going to be doing straight 9 volts and then up to 12. And then I usually use it camping, in the car, wherever I want to use it. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this bad boy apart. Okay, I got the bottom off. There's really not much to this. Now I'm just going to take this board off so I can see all the pieces to it. Okay, there's my board. I'm going to unplug the speakers here. Unplug the buttons. Okay, so there we have it. There's the simple little board. These are where your 2 speakers plug in. This is where all the buttons on the top plug in. Okay, so now that I got my board out, I'm going to see which pins here are positive and negative, so that I can solder my new power supply to. I'm just going to leave this so I don't have a hole in the back, and I can also use the rail jack. Probably won't use it too much, but it's nice to have. Okay, so now we can see that these 2 pins are negative, and then this one is positive. And we do actually get 12 volts, so that's good to know. 12.25 to be exact. Okay, so now that I know my plan's going to work, I'm going to I'm going to start drilling the holes, figure out where all this is going to go in here. So I think to mount this pass-through, I'm just going to go right here in the middle. It'll sit somewhere like right there. And I went with this certain pass-through because there are other ones that have a USB cable on the inside. Like this one, for example, it has a cable built on. But this just sort of pops in a hole. Well, this one I'm using has this nice rubber piece. I'm hoping will hold on, because this is fabric, it'll hold the fabric in place better. So that's why I'm going with this one, for example. Okay, so I'll put it right about there. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so that's about where it's going to go. I'm going to use this knife to cut the fabric through first. So hopefully my drill bit doesn't just suck it all down and ruin it. So I'm just going to cut a nice X. Okay, so now I can drill my hole hopefully, and then I should be able to pull all the fabric through nicely and section it down. To drill this hole, I'm just going to be using one of my stepper bits. Hopefully that should work. Okay, so we got our hole drilled. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but now I'm just going to get all this fabric sort of pulled in a bit here. Then I can stick this thing on. Hopefully it'll hold it. And then I can tighten it down on the inside. Okay, so it's a little dirty, but I got it all tightened down, and now we have a USB-C port on the back of this thing. Okay, so now I got to get this board all soldered up. I'm using the diagram online. I found I have to do these two pins, the middle one and the right one. Solder those together, and then that'll get me 9 volts. So it's not super pretty, but I did get those two both soldered together. So now let's test the output of this. Yep, 9.09 volts. So that is a success. Now I got 9 volts. And then since I like to make things overly complicated, instead of just doing 12 volts, I'm going to make that 9 volts and 12 volts using this little buck converter. So you have your power simply going from that coming in, and then you can use a little screwdriver to twist this until you get whatever output you want. And this is capable of outputting 2 amps at 12 volts, which is more than plenty for this speaker. Okay, so I just got some little wire here. This is 18 gauge, so I'm just going to make some small pieces for this. Okay, so I got those soldered up. It's not the prettiest, don't look at it too closely. Okay, so as you can see, it's at 13 volts right now, and I want to get back down to like 12.25, which is what it was at before. So I'm simply just going to turn this very slightly until it gets back down. You can see it slowly going down there. So there we go, now it's hovering around 12.2322, which is what I want. Now that I have that outputting what I want, I simply just need to wire 2 more wires from there to the positive and negative on this board. And I'm just going to solder them right to the back of the barrel jacks, then you can use both of them. And then I mount it inside and everything. Okay, so now I got the positive and negative here soldered up to those leads and going to the positive and negative of the out of the buck converter. And for the wire length, I just roughly eyeballed it how much I'd need inside the speaker. So now if I plug the barrel jack in there, we can see this is getting 12.28 volts. And then if I plug in my USB-C here, we get 12.25, just like we were hoping for. So now the speaker should run off 12 volts. And really, to make this simpler, you don't even need this. You can just do straight 12 volts out of this if you wanted, and then simply just solder that to there, and then you're done. I just like to overcomplicate things. Okay, so now that we built this thing, I just got to mount it somewhere inside this box. And I can either, you can mount it really anywhere. Mount it over here, but maybe I'll just mount it to make it easy. I'll just mount it right on the bottom. I'll just mount it right on the bottom of this thing. And the short USB cable can go right from there, right to here, and then these can easily reach down to there. So maybe I'll just do that. Okay, so I got those secured to the board just using some simple hot glue. And so those will go there, cable will come plug in, and then these will go off to this board. So now I get to assemble it all together again. Go off to this board. So now I get to assemble it all together again. So now they got it all back together. If I use a power delivery charger, for example, this one from Walmart, it's an ON branded one, which can do 20 watts, 9 volts. Then I have this U-Green one, 100 watt one, which these are great because it can do 5, 9, 12, 15, and 20. So these are just great ones. These all do 12 volts. So now if I use one of these, plug it into the wall, plug in my cable, and then plug my cable into the back of this thing here. turn it on. Only pulls 0.6 watts, and then even at full volume, I tried it already, even at full volume it still only pulls under a watt, which is pretty crazy to think about. So that works, and that's with the U-green charger. Then we'll use the on charger here, plug it in. Plug that bad boy in. And now it also pulls under a watt. It's off, turn it on. 0.3, 0.6, there you go. Since I kept it 9 volts instead of going up to 12, I was able to use this on one, for example, that only does 5 and 9 volts. And since it's so low power, any one of these that'll do 5 and 9 volts it should be able to handle. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting and want to do something like it, I will have all the parts I used linked down below. If you want to see more content like this, please hit that subscribe button and like the video. Thanks for watching.